I picked out 3 positional puzzles to specifically target different areas of positional chess that I feel people can improve upon. Incremental progress leads to exponential growth, so my hope for this video is to make everybody just a tad bit better at positional chess. Positional chess can be fun. We're going to be looking at great games from Anand, from Magnesium Calcium, from these 2 grandmasters who are very good at chess, though I've never heard of them. And we're going to start with this one. We're going to save the Magnus one for maybe 2 or 3. I'll pick the order as I go because I like doing things on the fly. So this one is white to move. How do you evaluate this position? Is it open or closed? Well, all 8 pawns are on the board. The center is very locked, so that would make for a closed position. How do you play a closed position? Well, major pieces are not so great in these types of closed positions, right? The best piece in closed positions is which piece? The knight, right? Open positions favor bishops. You like the bishop pair in them. Closed positions favor knights. We both have a couple knights. This knight is on the side of the board and it's not doing too much. However, if you feel like you're aiming in on g5 and decide to go h4, then this knight becomes a good piece. And you don't want that, right? You push too many pawns, you break too quickly, prematurely, you'll end up in a devastating position. Kind of the same thing, right? g4, it just doesn't call for these types of things in the position. You push pawns immediately in a closed structure, you're going to help out your opponent find outposts. So which piece should you seek to improve? Well, the best piece in closed positions, which would be the knight. Right? You can maneuver. It kind of becomes a maneuvering battle because closed positions are not so much about the loss of a tempo. It's about the quality of the pieces. And since it's so closed, the dynamic of the position is not going to change too much structurally. So you have time to improve pieces. We're going slow, but we're warming up. I really want to delve into this. Where would you want this knight? I would argue d5 is a beautiful square. Is it a feasible square? Let's see. Where can this knight go? Well, it can go to e1. From e1, where can it go? To c2, to b4, to d5. So you have a route in your mind. You have a plan. Now, you might be like, okay, but that takes 4 moves. That's way too many moves. What if they just push a5 and stop me? Well, look at this. Let's say you're going knight e1, b6, knight c2, a5. Yes, they stopped you from coming to b4, but what could you do here? 2 things. You can either have a change of heart and recognize that they created another outpost. All right, so every time you push a pawn, keep in mind, he can no longer kick you out of b5. So you might have a change of heart and go over to b5. Imagine a knight on b5, aiming at the rook, aiming at the base of the pawn chain, and you build up on the base. What I would do in this position is just go b4, recognizing that if they take, they'll have a backwards pawn, and you're still getting in. You're still getting in, and the b file is only going to benefit you. So in the game, black did not fight this. He just allowed the knight to come to d5. Of course, he got out of the fork, but he allowed the knight to come to d5. And look at this. The position hasn't changed much, except for the fact that this knight went from f3 to d5, where it stands way better. And this knight hasn't improved at all. Now, white expands on the queen side. He's like, okay, my pieces are perfectly placed. I'm going to expand. And not only did he expand on the queen side, he also expanded on the king side, g4. Now, black played the move pawn h5, and I want you to figure out how to punish this move. I think many people in this position might want to take, right? They might be like, oh, I'm going to take because if the queen takes, I'm going to take and fork them, or I'm going to fork them. What's the key word that we use there? The key word is if. That would assume that you are playing hope chess. Do not play hope chess. You got to assume they're going to play the best move, that is knight here. And again, kind of just the same train of thought. You might be like, oh, well, I mean, maybe I could do this. Maybe he won't see it and I could take a knight and he'll take and I'll win. That's hope chess. That's wishful thinking. It'll punish you in chess. It'll punish you in life. Don't do that. Right? They're just gonna move out of the way. They're not gonna play something like a6. They'll play like king f8 and there's just no forks in the midst. There's literally no fork. I mean, congrats. You have a good knight. That's about it. It's just aesthetically a nice knight. It's not doing too much. So what do? You might be like, okay, well, I'm going to push. And if they take, I get the open H file. That looks good. What was the key word again? If. They're not going to take. They're going to lock it up. And the queen side alone is not enough for you to win. I mean, it is, but you could get more. And you should get more if you could get more. So what do? Well, you blow open the king side. You're more coordinated on the king side. They're more coordinated on the queen side. So you go h4. You get this square of pawns that always seems too difficult to calculate. But when the ball is in their court and they're forced to respond first, very hard to play, right? Whoever releases the tension first, which will be the guy that's first dealt to respond to it, will feel the brunt of the attack. So let's look over both takes and takes. Well, arguably, if h takes g4, this is easier for white to win. You just take on g5, they take, you take, and you see now this knight is very good. King f8, okay, there's many, many ways to win this. One quick way to win this maybe would just be to go f6, they move the knight. You could even just give a check and win an exchange. That's enough. So, what if they take the other way? Well, it's a clearance sacrifice. You clear g5, you still go g5. You're threatening everything under the sun, literally. So they have to take, I would argue. You take, and it's essentially just the same position, but better. Right, king f8, it's kind of the same thing. So a devastating position for black. So the way to punish them would be h4, and that's how you win. And that's the first one I wanted to look at. Now let's look at the Magnus Carlsen one. However, he's on the losing end of it against Kramnik. Kramnik used to be good at chess, believe it or not. Many people don't like him nowadays, but he was very good at chess, believe it or not. So, what do we do here? What is happening? Let's explain the position. Let's delve in. So, Magnus just played knight to d5, and it's Kramnik to move, obviously, right? So, Magnus has 3 attackers on b4, and we only have 1 defender. So even if we add a defender, we're still going to lose that pawn. That doesn't seem too good. You might be like, we're just going to win a pawn. That's not the definition of winning a pawn. Those are doubled pawns, and this pawn on b4 was putting the clamp on c5. Is there a clamp on c5 anymore? No. So black's going to go c5, blow open the position, and all the momentum is now in black's court. So you cannot do that. So what's the move? The move is very beautiful. It's knight to b3. You have 2 attackers on b5. Your knight's going to come to a5, so the only thing they could really do is take. Do you take back? No. They have 2 attackers here. So you jump to a5. They can't go rook b8, right? Because we have 2 knights on c6. You're going to get a fork. So they have to go bishop to a8, and that's what he did. Now again, you don't take. There's multiple switches in the position. Knight a to c6. That is a fork. That is a very bad bishop. So he takes the knight with the bishop, but you're still left with a very good knight on c6, and you're still forking them. All right, phase 2. What do? Complicated. Do you take back? Doesn't look like it, right? 2 attackers still. Do you take the bishop? I don't know. Do you like this knight? I do. I think this is the best piece on the board. So why would you take a bishop? You actually take the knight, which some might be reluctant to do because it's with your fianchettoed bishop. And this is not hope chess, right? Because if queen takes, yes, you're going to fork them and win a queen, but they're going to go pawn takes. The point is you've removed a defender. They don't have a light squared bishop to punish your light squared holes. Your knight on c6 is making this pawn structure very, very bad, right? Because this pawn can't move. It's an immovable knight. It's a good knight versus bad bishop position, quite literally. Your pawn is caging in. Your pawn structure is caging in black's bishop. No one's going to move that guy. This guy, that is. And you are just going to build up on the weaknesses in the position. Kramnik went on to win, I think, in, 8 more moves. Hopeless position. This is the equivalent of us being up a queen, right? They're not even up a pawn. That's the equivalent of us being up a queen. That's how deep positional chess could get. That's how intricate the game could get. And I love positional chess. I used to not. I used to only like tactical chess, but I like positional chess now because it's kind of the more abstract version of the game, right? It's the abstract level of the game. It's like in life nowadays, I used to be like, people are playing so dumb, right? Like, why is this person playing so dumb? Like, don't play dumb. But then I just realized that two-dimensional. They don't study their positional chess. They don't go into the abstract, the 3D. People, I mean, I'm sure some people play dumb still, but nowadays I actually believe that some people are just that two-dimensional. Like they just lack. It's wild. It's wild, but that's why I study your positional chess. That was a little bit of a stretch of a connection, but we're on to number 3, and this is Viswanathan. Vishy Anand with the white pieces versus Gadakamsky with the black pieces. It looks like it stemmed from some Sicilian, some hedgehog type of Sicilian, right? Pawns on e6, d6. It's basically, the way I think of this is like a hippo, even though it's not really a hippo. It's like a hippo without a c-pawn, so it's a better hippo, arguably. In the hippo, in the hedgehog, where does black's counterplay come from? Well, it comes from b5 and it comes from d5. These are the two breaks. That's why Maroczy structures work so well against it, because it over-controls b5 and d5, making it hard for black to blast open in the center, making it hard for them to become active. So clearly white has a nice position here, but it's very easy to mess up if you're not exactly accurate, which Vishy Anand was. Right, I would argue a lot of people here would go pawn to g4. Okay, fine. Looks scary for black to deal with. However, black is just going to play pawn b5, and I would argue there is equal but opposite counterplay on the queen side, and there was no need to do something like this. Right? You really want to clamp down on them before striking. You don't want to strike too fast. So some people might be like, oh, I'll just go queen a4. There could be a queen trade. You know, I have a nice knight. You know, let's say they go b5. Like, I have a nice knight here on b6. All fair statements. But did they have to take? No, they didn't. So they'd probably go queen c7, and then they're going to use b5 as a tempo gainer. And you see, all of a sudden, the game is balanced. One incorrect move, it's not a blunder, it's just an inaccuracy. And all of a sudden, the game is completely balanced. So how do you stop b5? Well, you actually go queen to b6. This queen does not have too many squares to go to. In fact, it has no squares to go to. Black's bishop is tied down to d6, so that takes away bishop to d8. And so black is forced to take on b6. White take backs, and look at this position. The more you look at it, the more beautiful it gets. Have you stopped b5? Yes. Can they activate their rook? No. Can they trade off bishops to activate b5? No, because they're tied down. What could they do? It's a fantastic question. You might be like, oh, okay, they're just going to develop. And yes, it's the best move, but look how good white's position is. Find white's next move. Pawn to e5. It's kind of like a dagger, right? You have two attackers over here. Like this knight e8. You could just go bishop c5. Right? This is really where the beauty comes into the game. So they actually have to take. You take back. This knight is getting dislodged from this bishop, so knight to d5. And at the very least, you're winning a pawn. At the very least, you're winning a pawn. You can even build pressure because it's isolated. These bishops are bad. So I think 3 is a good number to stop at. We did 3 positional puzzles. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll leave it at that, I think, for today. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Have a great day. Peace. Boom.